Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when we have to ask ourselves a difficult question, one that many avoid because it challenges the very fabric of who they believe themselves to be. Are we being too kind to everyone? It sounds almost absurd, doesn't it? How could kindness ever be too much? But let's go deeper, because sometimes what we call kindness is really just fear in disguise. How many times have you said yes when your heart was screaming no? How often have you given your time, your energy, your peace to people who would never do the same for you? Society has conditioned us to believe that being a good person means bending over backward for everyone, even at the cost of our own well-being. But where in the rule book of life does it say that your kindness must come at your own expense? True kindness, the kind that comes from strength and not weakness, is never about being a doormat. It's about being compassionate without losing yourself. It's about helping others without sacrificing your dreams. Because let's be real, if you spend your whole life trying to please everyone, you'll wake up one day realizing that you pleased everyone except yourself. You were not put on this earth to be everything to everyone. Your purpose is not to be an emotional dumping ground for those who take but never give. It is not your duty to set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. Yes, be kind. Yes, be generous. But do it with wisdom, do it with boundaries, because if kindness costs you your peace, your energy, or your self-respect, it's no longer kindness, it's self-betrayal. So the next time you feel the urge to give and give and give, pause. Ask yourself, am I being kind out of love or out of fear? Am I offering this from a place of strength or because I'm afraid of disappointing someone? Because the truth is, the most powerful kindness you can offer the world is the kind that comes from a person who is whole, strong, and unshakably true to themselves. Choose wisely, choose yourself too. There is a fine line between kindness and self-betrayal, and too often people cross it without even realizing it. You tell yourself you're just being a good person, that you're doing the right thing, that kindness is the answer. But deep down, there's a part of you that feels drained, exhausted, maybe even resentful. And yet you keep giving, you keep sacrificing, because somewhere along the way you started believing that your worth is measured by how much you do for others, not by how much you honor yourself. But think about this. What if the kindness you're so proud of is actually costing you something far greater? What if, in always putting others first, you've been slowly erasing yourself every time you silence your needs to make someone else comfortable, every time you extend a hand but receive nothing in return, every time you say yes when your heart is screaming no? You chip away at the very essence of who you are. Kindness is a beautiful thing, but when it starts coming at your own expense, it stops being kindness and turns into self-neglect. There's nothing noble about giving so much of yourself that you have nothing left. The world does not need you to be a martyr. It needs you to be whole. It needs you to stand strong in your truth, to set boundaries without guilt, to give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. Because the truth is, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So before you offer another piece of yourself, ask this: am I doing this out of love or out of obligation? Am I truly helping, or am I just afraid of saying no? Because real kindness, the kind that matters, the kind that changes lives, never asks you to betray yourself in the process. How many times have you said yes when everything inside you was screaming no? How often have you agreed to do something not because you wanted to, but because you felt like you had to? Maybe you were afraid of disappointing someone, maybe you worried they would think less of you, or maybe, just maybe, you've spent so much of your life prioritizing others that you've forgotten how to prioritize yourself. Saying yes when you really want to say no is one of the biggest traps besides kindness. It feels like the right thing to do in the moment. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, or they need me, or I don't want to hurt your feelings, but what about your feelings? What about your time, your energy, your peace of mind? Every time you ignore your needs to satisfy someone else's, you send yourself a message. You tell yourself that your needs something, and the more you do it, the more you believe it. But here's the truth. Real kindness does not come from guilt or fear. It comes from a place of strength. It comes from knowing your worth and honoring it. There's nothing unkind about protecting your own space, about saying no when something is not serving you, about choosing yourself when the world demands otherwise. In fact, the strongest kindness you can offer is the kind that respects both others and yourself. So the next time you're faced with a choice, take a moment and ask yourself, am I saying yes because I truly want to, or am I saying yes because I'm afraid of what will happen if I do? Because if your kindness is rooted in fear, it's not kindness, it's self-abandonment. And you deserve better than that. From the time we are young, we are taught that being a good person means always saying yes, always being available, always putting others first. We are told that kindness is about selflessness, about giving without expecting anything in return. And so we grow up believing that in order to be loved, accepted, and valued, we must constantly prove our goodness through sacrifice. But at what cost? Somewhere along the way, this idea of kindness turns into something else, something heavier, something exhausting. It becomes a burden rather than a gift. You find yourself saying yes, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to. You stay in relationships that drain you. You tolerate disrespect because you don't want to be mean. You stretch yourself thin, trying to be everything for everyone, hoping that if you just give a little more, they'll finally see your worth. But here's what no one tells you. Kindness does not mean allowing yourself to be used. It does not mean breaking yourself to fix others. It does not mean carrying the weight of people who refuse to carry themselves. True kindness is not about proving your goodness. It's about living in a way that honors both you and the people around you. It is not a currency to be exchanged for love or approval. It is a choice, and like all choices, it must come from a place of strength, not desperation. Being a good person does not mean being a person who never says no. It does not mean allowing yourself to be walked over in the name of compassion. You can be kind and still set boundaries. You can be giving and still protect your energy. You can be loving and still choose yourself, because the truth is, the people who truly value you will never require you to sacrifice yourself just to keep them happy. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness, it's self-neglect. Too often people believe that in order to be kind, they must be endlessly available, always accommodating, and forever patient. They think saying no makes them selfish, that putting themselves first is wrong, that if they truly care about others, they should always be willing to sacrifice. But what if the real act of kindness isn't just about giving to others, but also about protecting yourself? Think about a river. A river flows freely, nourishing everything in its path, but it still has banks, boundaries that give it direction and purpose. Without them, the water would spill everywhere, becoming chaotic and destructive. Your kindness is no different. Without boundaries, it doesn't flow with purpose. It gets taken for granted, misused, and eventually it runs dry. How many times have you felt exhausted from doing too much for others, yet you kept doing it anyway? How often have you let someone cross a line, thinking it was the right thing to do, only to regret it later? Boundaries are not walls that shut people out. They are the structure that allows you to give without losing yourself in the process. They help you decide who gets access to your time, your energy, your love, and on what terms. And most importantly, they teach people how to treat you. There's nothing unkind about saying no to what drains you. There is nothing wrong with choosing yourself when something doesn't feel right. You can still be compassionate while protecting your peace. You can still love people while refusing to be mistreated. Because real kindness doesn't mean giving endlessly. It means giving wisely in a way that allows you to keep giving without destroying yourself in the process. Kindness should be a two-way street, not a one-sided sacrifice. Yet so many people find themselves trapped in relationships, friendships, partnerships, even family dynamics, where they are always the giver and never the receiver. They pour their time, energy, and love into people who take without hesitation, but rarely give anything back. They convince themselves that this is what kindness looks like, that true generosity expects nothing in return. But deep down, there's a quiet exhaustion, a sense of being unappreciated, unseen, and undervalued. There is a difference between being kind and being taken advantage of. When kindness is genuine, it creates a sense of mutual respect. It strengthens relationships, builds trust, and lifts both people involved. But when it becomes one-sided, when you're always the one bending, compromising, and adjusting while the other person simply expects it, that is not kindness, it's imbalance. And if you continue to give without receiving, you will eventually reach a breaking point where you have nothing left for yourself. Look at the people around you. Do they respect your time? Do they appreciate your efforts? Do they show up for you the way you show up for them? If the answer is no, it's time to stop convincing yourself that your kindness will change them. People who truly value you will never require you to deplete yourself just to keep them happy. The ones who take without giving will never suddenly realize your worth because they never had to earn your kindness in the first place. Real kindness is about balance. It's about giving with an open heart, but also knowing when to step back. It's about recognizing the difference between being compassionate and being used. You deserve relationships that nourish you, not ones that drain you. And the moment you start treating yourself with the same kindness you so freely give to others, you will see just how many people were only there for what they could take. Kindness should never come at the cost of your own self-worth. Too often, people confuse being kind with being self-sacrificing, believing that the more they give, the more valuable they become. They push aside their own needs, silence their own voices, and make endless compromises, thinking that this will earn them love, appreciation, or respect. But here's the truth. Your worth is not determined by how much you do for others. You are enough even when you're not bending over backward for everyone else. When kindness turns into self-neglect, it stops being kindness. If saying yes leaves you feeling drained, if constantly putting others first makes you feel invisible, if your generosity is leaving you empty instead of fulfilled, then you are not being kind, you are abandoning yourself. And no amount of external validation can replace the inner peace that comes from honoring your own needs. Imagine treating yourself with the same care and compassion you so easily give to others. What if instead of always prioritizing someone else's happiness, you made space for your own? What if you saw yourself as just as deserving of rest, respect, and love, because the moment you recognize your worth, you stop giving it away to people who don't appreciate it? You are not required to exhaust yourself to prove that you are a good person. Real kindness begins with you. When you value yourself, when you set limits, when you choose relationships that uplift rather than drain you, you are not being selfish, you are being wise. And when you operate from a place of self-respect, the kindness you offer the world becomes even more powerful because it comes from strength, not depletion. As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. Not all kindness comes from love, sometimes it comes from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as unkind. So you say yes when you mean no. You tolerate things that make you uncomfortable. You give more than you should, not because you truly want to, but because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. And before you know it, your kindness isn't really kindness anymore, just a way to keep the peace, to avoid confrontation, to make sure everyone likes you. But at what cost? How many times have you swallowed your own feelings just to keep someone else happy? How often have you said it's okay when it really wasn't? People who struggle to set boundaries often convince themselves that they are just nice, when in reality they are scared of disappointing others. They fear being seen as selfish. But here's something to think about. If your kindness is coming from fear rather than love, is it really kindness at all? The truth is, when you give out of fear, you are not really giving, you are negotiating. You are trying to buy acceptance, approval, or even just the absence of conflict. But real kindness does not come from a place of fear, it comes from strength. It comes from knowing that you can be kind while still standing firm in your truth, that you can be generous without being taken advantage of, that you can love others without abandoning yourself. So ask yourself, the next time you're about to say yes, am I doing this because I genuinely want to, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't? Because if your kindness is driven by fear, it is not kindness, it is self-betrayal. And the moment you start making choices from a place of love rather than fear, you will see just how much lighter, freer, and more powerful your kindness can truly be. You are not put on this earth to be everything to everyone. Yet so many people spend their lives trying to please, accommodate, and adjust themselves to fit the expectations of others. They believe that if they just give enough, help enough, sacrifice enough, they will finally be appreciated, finally be loved, finally feel like they matter. But the truth is, no matter how much you do, there will always be someone who wants more. And if you are constantly trying to keep everyone happy, you will wake up one day realizing that you've made everyone happy, except yourself. Living to please others is an exhausting, never-ending cycle. You say yes when you want to say no. You overextend yourself believing that if you just work a little harder, if you just prove yourself a little more, people will recognize your value. But here's the hard truth. People who only appreciate you when you are useful to them never truly appreciate you at all. And the more you prioritize their happiness over your own, the more they will expect it until you have nothing left to give. You were not born to be a background character in someone else's story. Your dreams, your goals, your desires, they matter. Your life is not meant to be spent constantly proving your worth to others. The people who truly belong in your life will never require you to lose yourself just to keep them. And the moment you stop seeking validation through self-sacrifice, the moment you start honoring your own needs, you will realize something powerful. Not only do you deserve to take up space, but you always have. So the next time you feel the urge to please, to overgive, to put someone else's happiness above your own, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it aligns with my values, or because I am afraid of letting someone down? Because if the only way to be accepted is to abandon yourself, that is not acceptance, it's control. And the moment you choose to stop living for others and start living for yourself, you will finally experience the freedom, peace, and fulfillment that you've been seeking all along. True kindness is not about giving endlessly until you are empty. It is about giving from a place of strength, not sacrifice. Too often, people believe that being kind means constantly putting others first, never saying no, and always making themselves available. They think that if they stop giving, stop helping, or stop overextending themselves, they will somehow be less of a good person. But real kindness does not ask you to destroy yourself. It does not ask you to exhaust your energy, to silence your needs, or to give to the point where you have nothing left. Think about a tree that bears fruit. It provides shade, nourishment, and shelter, but it also knows when to conserve its energy, when to shed its leaves, when to rest, so that it can grow stronger. It does not give endlessly until it withers and dies. It gives in balance, in rhythm with its own needs, because only then can it continue to thrive. Your kindness should be the same. It should come from a place of wholeness, not depletion. You are at your best when you are strong mentally, emotionally, physically, when you take care of yourself, when you respect your own limits, when you give because you genuinely want to, not because you feel obligated to, because when you are whole, the kindness you offer is not a desperate attempt to be liked, needed, or accepted. It is a gift, freely given, without resentment or exhaustion. So before you pour into others, make sure your own cup is full. Before you extend your hand, ask yourself if you are standing on solid ground, because the strongest kindness, the kind that truly makes a difference, comes from those who are not just kind to others, but who have first learned to be kind to themselves. Kindness is one of the most beautiful gifts you can offer the world, but only when it does not come at the expense of your own well-being. Too many people wear their endless generosity like a badge of honor, believing that their worth is tied to how much they give, how much they tolerate, and how much they sacrifice. But kindness is not meant to drain you. It is meant to flow through you. It should lift you up as much as it lifts others. Life is not about proving yourself through overgiving. It is not about bending so far to accommodate others that you forget what it feels like to stand tall. It is not about being everything to everyone while losing yourself in the process. Because at the end of the day, the people who truly love and respect you will never demand that you abandon yourself for their sake. Imagine what would happen if you started treating yourself with the same kindness you give so freely to others. If you spoke to yourself with the same compassion, if you protected your own peace as fiercely as you protect everyone else's, if you honored your own needs instead of constantly putting them last, imagine how much more powerful your kindness would be if it came from a place of fullness rather than exhaustion. It is time to stop seeing self-care as selfish. It is time to recognize that setting boundaries is not cruelty, it is self-respect. It is time to understand that saying no to what drains you is the first step toward saying yes to the life you truly deserve. Kindness is not about losing yourself for the sake of others. It is about showing up as the best, strongest, and most authentic version of yourself. And when you learn to balance giving with self-care, compassion, strength, and generosity with self-worth, you will not only transform your own life, but inspire others to do so. Because the world does not need you to be endlessly selfless, it needs you to be whole.